We're live together, and let's wait for a couple people to join, but, are you on your couch?
Like I literally have this is my cushion, and my girlfriend says that she goes, "You really sit on a couch," and so she'll actually switch out the cushions because I start denting them.
Well, it's part of your identity and your handle, so it works for you,
Yeah,
right? It works for you.
but it's such a natural concept where it started with me just talking shit to people on Facebook, and I'd be like, "Dude, I'm just a dude on the couch. Why do I know better than this guy?" And then I
I
just started
like
letting
that,
Nick
and I
G be
saw
on the couch.
today because I tried to look at more of your writing and
Yeah,
your posts, and I looked at the description, and I thought it's so meaningful because I feel the same in a lot of ways that I'm very much interested in talking just to the people, the people, you know? I have a much harder time with, really paying attention to people with these huge platforms because I feel like there's a lot of regurgitation. And
yeah.
so, I'll just let you know that yesterday morning when I woke up, and I saw your live, as you know, it was so nice to see
Like,
somebody talking about something different,
seriously.
and you were
Well,
talking about James Tallarico,
mhm,
and
all
I was
day.
like, "Okay, this is something different. This is something different." The title of it even said something like, "We're being fooled," or
Yeah,
"We're being played," I think is what you
yeah.
said,
Well,
and,
I'm a
I
wrestling
was like,
fan.
"Okay, okay, I wanna hear this."
That's it. I'm a wrestling fan. And through being a wrestling fan, right now there are currently like 3 live shows, just WWE. There's 3 live shows a week, 2 plus hours a week. So with saying that, that means that there's 6 hours of TV where there's storyline, where there's good guys, there's bad guys. We watch TV series and stuff like that.
Yep.
But through watching decades and decades of this stuff, I see character stuff real quick. Plus, we're in the era of binge watching, and I'll take through like we're just finishing up Malcolm in the Middle and stuff like that. And while I'm watching this entertainment sitcom, which I fought, I watched this in reruns. Why would I want to see this live? But through watching this, I've actually been formulating a piece that from around like 2000s till now, you actually see the unwinding of American culture. I mean, I was born in '77. I like to say I'm as old as Star Wars.
3 here.
Woo! But you think about that. You and I are in the first generation of American civil rights. Like when you and I were growing up, we were there with the Electric Company and Sesame Street and all
Yep.
the multicultural and racial stuff starting to come across.
Yes.
I always make the joke that diversity when we were kids was a red-haired kid, usually one with glasses, a girl, a Latin kid, an Asian kid, and like a blonde kid. Like that was diversity as we saw in cartoons until, of course, the shirt tales in which they just made them animals.
That's a great point. In terms of us and when we were born, I just wanna point out, I was born 2 days before Roe v. Wade was passed.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was born January 19, and it was
Yeah.
January 21st of '73. So I just always I think about that and,
Yeah.
how there really hasn't been a single generation of women who, have been alive for their entire life that had the right to their own body. So,
Yeah. Shit, you think about that. You
it's
had right
wild.
to your own body, but you didn't have right to a bank account.
That's a great point. That came, I think, in your year. I think that was '77.
Yeah.
I think that was
Yeah.
'77. That's right. That's right. Well, I just wanna say hello to our audience real quick, okay? And, everybody, I'm here with Nick G, and I love it. And so I'm just gonna say hi to some people who joined. Hi, Larry. Hi, so good to see you. Ralph, Darla, Tom, Taralee, observations from the poop deck, maybe. That's hilarious. The great Zen from Atlantis. Hello. John Tomlinson, Stephen Turner. Let's see. Yes, the great Zen from Atlantis is saying, "It is I, the great Zen from Atlantis." Everybody, I'm so glad to have you in my community today. And I'm so glad to be talking with Nick G from his couch. And the reason why I wanted to connect with Nick is because I heard him yesterday morning on live, and I love being here and just connecting with people because this is how we're going to make it through authoritarianism, Nick.
Yeah.
This is it. This
That's the
is
way I
it.
feel about it too. We talk to each other.
That's right.
I listen to a lot of black media. And in saying that I listen to a lot of black media, I mean American black media, which is, you know, the people who are very well acknowledged. They came from the people who were their grandparents were slaves and slave owned by people and still dealt with the oppression. It was actually Questlove, Amir Johnson Questlove from the Roots. It was actually him that first gave me that concept. Dude, you were born in the era of civil rights. I'm thinking about it. I don't remember if it was his book, Hip Hop is History or Music is History.
Okay.
It was one of the two in which he presented it.
Okay.
And it blew my mind. But that also kind of led me off in a direction. I read this book called The 90s. Turns out I was there. But when I read about it, it wasn't the same experience that I had as a teenager. You know what I mean? And in it, they made this statement where you are constantly fighting the battles. You're responding to 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And I think about that. When I think who I'm talking to, my parents, I immediately think of like the band America. Sister Golden Hair is my brain image of that era. Sometimes it switches out with Buffalo Springfield, but America's my joint. And I think about that, and that's constantly who we're talking to. But in the '80s, when we're listening to, the Smiths, and I just wanna be loved. I love that line because it sums up that era where we were breaking away from, men being men and these kind of gender fluid emotions that we were starting to have, as a culture and stuff like that. And so here we are. And like I was talking about Malcolm in the Middle, that show is exactly it. Even the theme song is wild. It's kind of funky. It's kind of scratchy. It's off. It jams. It gets out of it. But we've lost the era of being tight because we're all kind of finding our own genuine experience.
Hmm. I love your perspective. And
Thanks.
I loved that you said we were born in the era of civil rights because a lot of people may not know that the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were both passed in the 60s, 65 and 68. And so that early part of the 70s and beyond was when actually Black people had a protected right to their vote.
Yeah.
But that immediately afterwards in the early 70s is exactly when the Heritage Foundation was founded,
Yeah.
as well as, the Federalist Society and where originalism first was created, man-made, and so
Yeah.
you're right, we were born in that initial time of civil rights where these new laws were actually taking place and protecting people, but immediately began the movement against them. And of course, that's what we're seeing now. And I mentioned earlier for people who just joined that I was born right right before Roe v. Wade was passed. And in 2022, when it was overturned, obviously that was a very hard day for me. It was a very hard day for all of us. And I could tell it was coming. I could tell that with the Trump justice or injustice picks of his term that this is where we were going. So, yeah, it's so nice to connect with another Gen X and to, again, build our community. Me and you having a relationship, we're going to be in this fight for the rest of our lives. And
Straight
we're
up.
going to need to know each other.
All of us. It's important for us to communicate. And you talk. I'm an older dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm a warehouseman. I tire out 20-year-olds, and then I'd be like, just send that guy over. I'm a pretty verbal dude, and I work in a warehouse, and it's 12-hour shifts. And when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I had a terrible day. I started like uncontrollably crying on the
Ah,
drive to
me
work.
too, Nick.
Dude, I'm in a warehouse and I'm a manly man because I'm tough. And
And you're in
and
a
the
warehouse. Yeah.
and the children, these 20-year-old children could not understand why this grown dude was just weeping, like, my face leaked all day. Eventually, my girlfriend comes up and she goes, "What e what exactly happened that you're so upset about?" And I'm like, "What?"
What?
You know what I mean? But, um, I I always use the quote, it comes from, My Philosophy, by Boogie Down Productions, and it's the line that KRS-One uses as the cut to lead into the song, "I think very deeply," and I hear that hook all the time because that's the way I
Hmm,
think, react, I read everything. As a matter of fact, we just went through, we binge, that's our quality time, you know, the power of my relationship is we give ourselves the time to be ourselves, then we come together to eat, we come together to relax, you know what I'm saying?
sure.
So we just binged through the Steve Harvey Show, and then, Steve Harvey, that's Cedric the Entertainer,
Yep.
then we watched, the Hughleys, which is DL Hughley,
Yep.
and then we watched the Bernie Mac Show, so we completed all the
Fantastic.
yeah, all the sitcoms, but in watching it, I'm listening to Karen Hunter, which is new to me. I'm listening to Sabby Sab, Sabrina Salvati. I'm listening to Amanda Seales. I'm listening to Professor Greg Carr. Brianna Joy Gray is the young bloods coming up in that. Another one is Laree Daniel Favors, which is where I learned the term Sankofa from. Go back and get it. But so we're watching this, and as I'm exploring, I'm shaking my the way I was raised. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, "Ew, that's gross." You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I'm taking it off, and I'm watching this, I'm going, "That's racism. Wait, that's sexism. I can't watch this because it's this." And she would
Yeah.
just be like, "Dude, can't you just shut it off and watch the TV?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "But I can't."
But that means so much to me, Nick. And also, you feel deeply. You don't just think deeply, you feel deeply.
I like to
A
feel that way.
Right? Yeah, because like you said, you were weeping. You were weeping on the day that Roe v. Wade was overturned, and you could feel it, and you weren't afraid of feeling it,
Oh, no,
right?
no. Actually, my
That's
biggest
incredible to me because it's hard for people. We
well,
are a
my
society that's been conditioned to suppress our emotions, right?
yeah.
That's part of the loss of our culture is that we've been, conditioned to hide and to suppress our emotions. So to hear you say that, it means so much to me, really.
Hey, that's actually what brought me into, like, the house music, like, what I felt when I first started getting into house music was all the emotion. Like I told you, I'm shaking off my childhood, the youth that raised me. I was a New Jack Swing kid. New Jack Swing, for anybody that doesn't know, is where babies come from, you know what I mean? And so, that was my stuff, but like I said, I'm listening to Malcolm in the Middle or, the music and the culture that comes around that. We did the same thing when we went through the X-Files. You watch pop culture go from frizzy hair that you did your best with to managed product and style to being the revolutionary icons that Mulder and Scully became. But you're watching that progress. That's the way that I watch my stuff. But when I'm watching my childhood advance, I'm realizing the music that I listened to was rape culture.
Oh,
All of it. All
I
of
don't
it.
know if you said that to me the other day. I think you did.
Maybe.
I think that's something that you commented on one of my posts about rape culture. And
Sure.
that was so, again, so meaningful to me because so few people realize it's embedded everywhere.
Dude. Hey,
Right.
my number 1 song for that where and I had an epiphany listening to the song was "Lightning Strikes" by Lou Christie, and he's singing about how he can't stop trying to talk to this young lady. You know what I'm saying? And I love the song. I mean, it's one of those, "And I can't stop." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Yeah," and I just said that. Gross. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
when
Yes.
you consciously think about the words that come out of your mouth, when you consciously think about the words you put into your ears. Now, let me dive off real quick.
Yeah.
Pharrell Williams in the
Yeah.
music is everything. Everybody loves Pharrell because we're happy. So one of my favorite Pharrell joints is NERD, his group that he had. And it was they played their live instruments and it wasn't produced, it was performed. And that was my jam. Like, I was handing this out to people all the time, letting people borrow it. I know I had an exchange program where this guy, "Here, try this 311." I was like, "Here, try this NERD."
That's
But
awesome.
I recently started listening to it. I was, like, about 3 tracks in. I was like, "I can no longer
Wow.
listen to what was one of my favorite albums
Wow.
because it sensationalizes. I call it the bad boy era. You know what I'm saying? Early 2000, coming up into 2015, I guess. The bad boy era before we knew what we know now about Puffy. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But what we know now from the Epstein dump, you had your Puffy, you had your Jay-Z, you had that world. So, like, I was reading my piece this morning, and and there's an incident that happened in a club,
I
and I'm
loved
in
it,
the
by the way. You guys should read it. Everyone here
thing.
should read what Nick wrote today.
I appreciate that. And I'm thinking this was the music, but as I'm thinking this was the music, yeah, this is what we were doing. We went from being, I'm a hip hop head. I like to look at hip hop like like it's my sibling. We were both born in '77. Me and Sugar Hill. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And from there, we don't always get along. Sometimes we go to our own spaces, but we'd always come back. That's actually how I got into house music as a whole was the DJ brought me. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Mhm.
But when I listen to that, it's toxic communication. What started out as 5% culture, disco meets 5% culture. So you have the heart, the soul of black culture. And then you have the cipher of the 5% culture, which it's really not a white people thing, but it's a spinoff of Muslim culture where the I'm drawing a blank because I'm talking, but it's the unity of something of the earths and moons or something like that. And
Okay.
what they're doing is it's a spinoff of Muslim culture where they're giving everybody the respect of a man, of a god. You are not just a man, you are a god, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so the stuff that we grew up listening to in rap culture, word is bond, you know what I'm saying? Like numerology is another thing, not numerology as we know it. There is their own definition of the numerology. Me being Nick G, I would be G the seventh letter. The seventh letter is God. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So there's a lot of coded dialogue in it. So we took that in early culture. And we took something that was positive. And because Scantron really, the white people who had money in the suburbs, they really liked their angry black folks. They really liked their ghetto stuff. And
Yep.
they really liked it being a counterculture that was separate and not acceptable. So it started
Yes.
off as a joke. It would then go on to be a shorthand, for something. And now you have corporate boardrooms where they talk about their bling bling and their chingy and all that jazz. And then they'll play their puffy while they exclude black folks from the room. But what they did as they progressed on is our message stopped being about communication and uprising. And it started just being about what we listen to now where it's about booty shaking, it's
Oh my
about all
gosh.
this other stuff. Not
And
not that
yes.
who
And
doesn't
it's not
appreciate,
just
a
it's
little
not
bit of
just
shake
men, right? It's
at all.
also ingrained in the female artists as well.
Ask them.
And because this is all, I'll just say patriarchy,
Very
and it's internalized by all the genders. We can't escape it. We can decondition ourselves, like you're
yeah,
talking about. We can deprogram, but we
yeah,
all were raised um, to be conditioned into
yeah.
this. And, I love what you're saying about really listening rather than passively hearing, right? Really listening and analysis, which is what you're talking about. What do these words actually really mean? And also what you're saying about once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And then, I don't know, things don't have the same, you don't have the same love for them because you're really hearing the things you can't unhear that are very harmful.
Hey, you said that. I grew up on Bill Cosby. I mean, I was Picture
Same.
Pages, I was Fat Albert, I was The Bill Cosby Show, I was, his stand-up. My
His
dad had his
stand-up, I
record.
mean, classic.
Cliff Huxtable raised me because I was a TV kid. So whatever sitcom was on at night, I'd sit in my chair in front of the TV with my 3 liter of orange soda. Remember those? You get them for like a buck
Oh,
29.
yeah.
I'd get my 3 liter of orange soda and I would watch my sitcom dads. And the only one that wasn't the punchline was Cliff Huxtable. You know what I'm saying? He
Great
opened me up
point.
to culture. I saw Kenty Cloth. As a matter of fact, like I say, I'm a hip hop head. So I grew up listening to classic rock. I'm not, you said you're East Coast. I grew up listening to Pix 106. It's the Albany station. It's classic rock. It was Mason and Sheehan in the morning. It was all
Yep,
the America. It was all the Blondie. It was all the
yep,
all the Buffalo Springfield. I grew up getting my roots, but that wasn't the best music that was happening at the time. I happened to live around white people, so that's the music, the pool that I heard.
yep.
When I
Mine
started
too.
listening, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But then when I started listening to this other music, there's other communications, there's other sounds, there's other dialogues happening that I'm not hearing because what am I listening to? This produced music that says these things, that sets this up, even jumping from music into the movies. Think about TV, think about movies. It was always the one woman that was always sought after was always smaller chested, she was always slender, she was
Oh,
always
yes.
you know what I mean?
Oh,
As a matter of fact,
yes.
hey, real wild, and the first time as a kid, God, I wanna say it's '85. The first time as a kid that I realized it is the Garbage Pail Kids movie, and I'm watching this woman run who's one of these bad guys, and she was kind of a curvier woman, and there's bouncing everywhere, and I'm like, "Why isn't that type of person ever the woman that's sought after?" Like, it was literally I can cite that
Oh
movie.
God, we were the generation of fat phobia. I mean, and even in, the boomer generation, my mom and whatever, I mean, it still comes up a lot.
Yeah,
It's very toxic.
yeah,
And I have a teenage daughter who is very, um, you know, I mean, right away, if something is body shaming, if something is discriminatory in any way, she's on it. This younger generation, I'm so grateful. They're very emotionally intelligent. They're very
yeah,
socially intelligent. By the way, I want to say one thing. Every generation has its brilliant humans. I don't
yeah,
criticize any generation.
no,
There's beautiful people from every single generation, and that's one way that the oligarchs divide us is by criticizing generations. So I just want
yeah,
to bring that up that like in every generation you can even see it. There are people who are loving, there are people who are humane, there are people that will fight for all of us. And that, all of these ways that we've been conditioned to be divided. You mentioned sort of throwing off, what was, how you were formed,
yeah,
and that's what we have to do because we have been divided by race, class, gender, religion, location, education level. They have masterfully divided the United States and not just the United States, but very much so in the United States. And it's very masterful because look, right now we have to unite and we're very far behind. Oh, and by political party, of course, too. I mean, that's one of the most masterful divisions that we have is the binary of red and blue and
it is so
Democrats versus
silly.
Republicans. We're split down the middle when in reality it's all of us versus the 1%.
Yes.
So yeah, that's one of the things that I is very important to me right now in just how I'm approaching this moment is to break down the propaganda and the conditioning of the divisions between all of us.
I think that's highly valid. And you even talking about the parties, I salt and pepper this idea in, and I have trouble forming solid thoughts, and I'll start typing my
Doesn't
little
seem
salt
like it
and
to
pepper.
me.
I look at it like the properties, solid, liquid, and gas.
Yes.
Inside my head, it's a gas. When I speak it
Ooh,
outside of my mouth, it's a liquid. When you speak something that I said to somebody else and it translates, my thought became solid.
ooh, I
That's
love
like in
that.
my head. I've written it down a bunch.
I
Um,
love that metaphor. That's amazing.
but it's what we do. Well, yeah, like I said, I work in a warehouse. I was a trainer. I stepped down. I work for Target. So you understand my
Okay.
bigger picture. I work in a Target warehouse. It's a distribution center. It's a large warehouse, and I look at it like a nation. You know what I mean? Each department is its own little village and stuff like that. But as a company, it's almost like they have an AI robot running the company where there isn't real world thought, and it's I have problems with it. So I stepped down from the training program,
Okay.
but I was a trainer. So I get 5, 6 people at a time coming through the door. Not so much now because our economy, but when it was bigger. I'd get 6 people at a time, and I'd reel them in, and I'd reel them in by talking to them as if I already knew them because time isn't real. I'm going to already know them, so I'm speaking to them from that point in time where we're already cool. Sometimes I'd meet somebody, I'd be, "I already don't like you because this," you know what I mean? But, you know, that's how I'd bring people in. But I'd spend time talking to people, and the more you talk to people and, instead of the, by the 50th time, you've got, "Here it is." You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's what I do for a living. I'm a therapist. I
Okay.
talk to people all
Really?
day long,
Yeah,
and I've been a trainer too about a lot of things, but what I'm gonna say is, I mean, I love that you were a trainer. They were so lucky to have you. I don't know exactly what you trained in, maybe it was the company
yeah,
policies and procedures, I don't know,
everything,
but,
everything.
they were lucky to learn from you.
I get excited. When I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm a Star Trek fanatic because I'm 100% in on Star Trek. I'm a wrestling fanatic because since childhood, I've been a wrestling fanatic. You know what I mean? As far as house music, I was a convert. I was in LA and I'm in a club and I'm dancing. And then I wasn't present. Like when you meet born again people and they talk about they had that Jesus moment where I felt him enter me.
Yep.
I'm on a dance floor and I felt connected to everybody else. Now
That's
I'm not talking.
spiritual right there. That's
Well,
spiritual
yes,
connection.
it is. Well,
That's spiritual connection. Yeah.
when you're watching like Night at the Roxbury, when you're watching like, that kind of going to the club and they got the DJ gimmick, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a genuine there's a genuine group of people bringing it back to Stonewall, bringing it back to traditional house music. Shit, I'll bring it back to Sedgwick Avenue where they were just trying to have a nice party for families and kids. Um, the DJ, the club has always been the church for the people I'm saying Stonewall specifically, because you couldn't be a man in drag. Stonewall would have, ballroom. So people would go in there and they do ballroom dancing in their thing. And that was the evolution of that. The reason that disco had to die was because white people were excluded. No, no, not excluded. You could come in, Mr. White Man, but you're not white. You're one of many. And so feeling that inside the club, and like that piece I wrote about, I was in this club in Glens Falls, New York. There was nobody in that club who wasn't just trying to tip back a few, trying to meet somebody, trying to be seen looking away.
Mhm.
Is that you? That's me. Weird.
As an alarm?
Yeah, I set an alarm at 2 o'clock. Well, because I work nights and weekends. Um, I kind of have a 10 to 2 nap window where I make sure that I dip out for a little while so I can still maintain my night schedule.
Very
So
important, naps. Very
that
important.
well, yeah. Well, you think
Yeah.
biologically, we we aren't, we aren't like up for sleep for 8 hours, up for this many hours. Biologically, we're supposed to be barefoot running around and hiding out in the cold. You know what I mean? But
Yes, I
I
do, and I think about that all the time because as a mental health therapist, so many people have problems with their sleep, and I try to
yeah,
help them understand that, like, it's because we're not really designed to be sleeping all of this time, and
yeah,
I really try to help people listen and tune in to their actual physical body and follow those cues for them.
yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah. I
We're
wanted to
organized.
say something about that, because one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is, intuition and how we were conditioned to not listen to our bodies. We were conditioned to ignore, and especially girls, going back to what you said, rape culture,
Yeah,
um, allowing people to hug you when you didn't want to, give you a kiss when you didn't want to. I know all the women in the audience or who will hear this later will have experiences of being, felt up in various situations without that weren't consensual and, having feelings and being told like, no, no, it's not that big of a deal, or stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. All of these ways that we have been conditioned as a society to tune out from ourselves. And the need right now to tune in or to learn how to tune in because why? nothing around us is true or real. We are being fed
Then
propaganda constantly. And so, like, for example, when the 2024 election happened, I felt it in my gut.
yeah,
Something's not right. This
yeah,
doesn't make sense.
yeah,
And I was right. And things like that now I think are more important to teach our children. Specifically, if you get a tingle, if you get a feeling in your body, if something doesn't make sense to you, follow that,
yeah.
believe that. That's what I
Trust your
feel
hunch.
we need to help people understand right now more than ever.
Very much so. And you talking about the physical body stuff. I feel like I owe a debt of good because, like I said, I grew up in that culture of
Yeah.
discomfort. I
Yeah.
was that guy who was putting my arm around somebody. I was that guy that as soon as I'd start feeling a vibe with a woman, it had to become a physical relationship because I didn't get it. And it wasn't until
Right.
I started having best friends, you know what I'm saying,
Yep.
that I was hanging with, and I saw and, like, in the warehouse right now, if I was to name my top 5 champion, I'm a wonk, you know what I'm saying, when I see people moving up and doing stuff, and mind you, I am nobody to anybody. If you walk in the day 1, "Hi, here's your badge, do a job," I'm that guy because I don't have any titles or anything, but as soon as I see somebody come in and they're new, I'm like Slugworth to Willy Wonka. I'm like, "Hey, dog." You know what I'm saying? And everybody knows me. I don't have any right around me, but I have my Nick G shirts. I have 6 of them. And some of them have sleeves, some of them don't because sometimes I feel like it, sometimes I don't. But everybody in the warehouse knows where Nick G is at any given time because you can see it. And I meet
That's
people and
amazing.
nobody's going to be like, this guy showed me a tip. They're going to be like, Nick G showed me a tip. And I
Yep.
meet so many young people. I actually had to stop talking about cultural stuff that we know. I mean, our culture growing up, what we saw on TV was what our parents and grandparents saw, in movie theaters and stuff like that. So we
Right.
had that vaudeville bring up. I was able to teach my son who was like, 5, 6, 7 about like the Dust Bowl and stuff like that because he was really into Popeye, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And they used to teach while they entertained, and now we're just bang, boom, boobies, you know what I mean? And that's essentially all of it. But I spun out, I got talking. Um,
Let me connect with you on one point.
thank you.
One, I really like what you said about, it sounds like kind of trying to stay, at the same level, right? Kind of keeping hierarchy like no, not like rejecting hierarchy and
Yeah,
keeping things flat. That's also how I have approached life, and that is also why I am much more interested in talking again to people right here in this audience, to you, to the regular Americans, rather than watching media or following these large platform
yeah,
commentators, because it's all sort of this top-down
yeah,
filtered media where it's curated, and then you get people who are just sort of commentating on that, and it's very
yeah.
boring to me. It's very
There
boring, and it's like a regurgitation and a circular conversation. You mentioned, in your live yesterday how you had like written something, on Allison
yeah,
Gill, of course, she's brilliant and whatnot, but, like, she's just a regular human being, and,
yes, that's my favorite
there
part.
everyone needs to be humbled, everybody needs to kinda come down and meet the people where they're at, because that's this hierarchy in society, it just replicates patriarchy over and over and over
Yes.
again, and I'm bored with it, Nick, I'm bored with it.
I guess, here I am and we keep learning new things. And as we learn new things, I think about, when Trump first started in 2015, when we first started seeing him, it's like how quaint, that kind of stuff. And here we are and everything's it's like watching Supernatural. You know what I mean? In the beginning of the scene, they just need this gun. And by the end of the thing, oh, this gun? You know what I mean? Like it's nothing. Because there's bigger shit afoot. Um,
Yep.
we have now that I know about neurodivergence, I see the world in a different way.
Ah,
I grew up. I grew up in Gonzo the Muppet was the closest person that I related to, and that's not hyperbole, that's legitimate.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Gonzo, yeah.
Yeah, but then I learned about neurodivergence, and I'm talking in the last 3 or 4 years, and
Mhm.
then it was like I one up my game. You know what I'm saying? It was like, "Oh, now I see it everywhere." We'll be watching TV, and I'll be watching a character, and I call him the Winnie the Bish because, in the show New Girl, Winston, he's kind of an odd bird, you know what I mean? And every and my girlfriend would always point out, "Oh, you just keep looking for the Winnie the Bish," and I'm like, "Yeah." So now whenever I look for the weirdo, I'm always looking for that. I feel like Stephanie Tanner was kind of the Winnie the Bish, in Full House. I always go to Stephanie Tanner because I think she was just fascinatingly entertaining in the first season, and Neurodivergent is where her and I kinda connect. I started listening to their Full House podcast. That's really where I first started listening to, Stephanie Tanner. What's her real name? Can't think of it. Um, but I started listening to her as a person talking. She's a heavy activist in, like, the LA area and stuff like that, really progressive and all. But as she's talking, she's funny because she's neurodivergent. You know what I mean?
Thank goodness for the recognition of neurodivergence because otherwise it was all about conforming,
Yeah,
right? Like you were saying before, the diversity that was seen during our generation and neurodivergence was very people were isolated, people were marginalized. And now it's interesting. Again, I'm a therapist. So, again, a lot of my younger clients will come right in and say, I'm autistic or I'm neurodivergent. And it's embraced. I
yeah,
mean, yes, they're trying to still live in a society that conforms and where they may not always be valued, but at least there's a name. There's a way that we can, as soon as we start putting language to things, is how we start to understand.
yeah,
That's how our brain works.
yeah,
So the words that the younger generation has to understand life is I'm just so grateful. And by the way, who did that? We did that. These are our kids. We're the
yeah,
ones we're the ones who created the younger generations. And
absolutely.
so I'm very proud of us for doing that. And I think that neurodivergence is a lot of people talk about how so many people like me and you, people that are empathic are often the ones who are more neurodivergent, that there's sort of a superpower in neurodivergence that is related to empathy.
I always say anxiety is my superpower, but yeah, neurodivergence too. I thinking about what you said, you're saying you're talking to young people. I talk to young people. One of the things that I say, I actually got this from a younger person, and she was in her 30s giving advice saying, seek younger mentors. And she was talking about 20-year-old people. And I'm like, no, this is great. You're 30. I like it. Um, and I keep hearing about the male loneliness epidemic. I keep hearing about how people are secluded and they're all these different things. But they're coming from people our age because they heard something talked about on the television, they heard their podcast say the thing, who they respect. But in reality, when I'm talking to young people, they got their shit together. Like, they have their minds together. They don't want the dynasty as we grew up. When I talk about dynasty, I'm talking about who killed JR, that kind of riches and hoarding. They don't they don't seek that. They want
No,
to
they
exist.
don't.
In 2018, I drove Uber in the Albany region in New York State, and, I picked up so many people. There are so many hospitals, there are so many schools, and there are so many young people, and they didn't want to have jobs so they could have things. They wanted to have jobs so they could enrich their lives and enrich people's lives. They wanted to explore, they wanted to see, they wanted to have experiences. They did not wanna settle down and have children. They wanted to exist.
Mm. And that's what the backlash is all about, right? That the traditional norms are being rejected. And the unity that has come through recognizing there are more than two genders, for example, the
Yeah.
inclusivity, the body inclusivity, the way that the younger generation, it's like they don't have the same glasses on. They don't see some of the divisions that were ingrained in us.
Hey, that's because they didn't watch the same TV we did growing up. When you think about it, and that's really the crux of everything. You know, you had World War II end, and then at the end of World War II, you jumped into the 50s. You had your Beaver and Cleaver, you had your Daddy's Knows Best, you had, you know, your black guy in Bill Cosby on I Spy. You eventually had Gloria, you know what I mean? But it took like the Duke boys to teach us about diversity. No, this guy's okay, you know, that kind of stuff. And we were constantly given a TV show until like the 70s and 80s. You know, you think about, of course, I laugh about it. Like all the bad guys in office right now are all the bad guys from Captain Planet, like in the same, you know. But we watched until a point, and I'm saying in the 90s, 2000s, I think I'm going to blame, I always put it on Tupac, Larry the Cable Guy, like that whole blue collar comedy tour kind of thing. And I put it on the anti hero, Wolverine, Venom. You know what I mean? We started watching more of the anti hero than the hero. Of course, to me, the hero was always like the John Cusack kind of guy, the Bill Murray. But it stopped being that guy and it started being the badass. And, you know, and then, and like I said, I made the icon of Tupac. Tupac is an amazing man until he played Bishop in the movie Juice, because then it kind of broke and he became different than the person that his mother had raised. He was still a solid dude, but he had
Sure.
become somebody else. But when I say that, I say Larry the Cable Guy, who is highly educated, highly smart, is, you know, actually like has credentialed education. But he went on stage one time and was making a joke about some dude. And he went back and they said, "This is funny, keep doing it." And that's how we got him. But what happened is, talking about the TV, you know, the TV was a morality play and it would teach you the good thing until it was no longer teaching you the good thing as being the moral thing to do, but the badass thing to do. You know, like I'm talking about Malcolm in the Middle. By then, we've lost the cowboy with the white hat. And now the guy that wins is the guy that somehow managed to shave a cat and not get in trouble for it. You know what I mean? So we've elevated our moral compass into getting the thing done, but not being respected as a whole, as an individual doing good things for everybody.
I think a really, interesting kind of, I don't know, just observation you're bringing to the table, and of course I know it, but I don't generally talk about it, is how much we learn from TV and
Yeah,
movies. And of course I know this again intellectually, but I don't know, it's really present, and your commentary with music, TV, you know, the culture of America is relevant, and it expands my view of things, you know, because again, these aren't necessarily topics I'm talking about, but I'm listening to you and I appreciate it.
um, everything is everything. You know what I mean? You know, you're talking about coming up with a word to start talking about a topic. But in my head, I always come up with, is this or is this not? You know what I mean? I can't always tell you what something is, but I can sure as hell tell you what it isn't. If everything is everything, an apple and a hot dog are two different things, but you can eat them both. They're both edible. So everything is everything in that sense. But if a food is edible and something else is not edible, but you can eat it, it's also edible. Is it nutritious? No. But that gives to how you base off the definition of what is by saying what is not.
I love the way you think.
I'm a little broken.
Play. I appreciate that, you know, and that's one of the reasons, again, why I wanted to come on because the only way that we can actually really move forward right now is by dialogue. You know,
Yeah,
what we've ingested is so prescribed, it's so limited, it's so one thing. Not everything is everything, right? It's like we've been told what to think, we've been told how to think, and
yeah,
the only way to break out of that is by dialogue.
yeah,
One of the things I said earlier today, you know, well, a lot of what I've been talking about today is just like deprogramming, decolonizing, like questioning every single thing that we were ever fed,
yes,
because people don't even realize that one of the things that happens a lot is that, if let's say I make a point and it's not really within the norm, you get a lot of arguments against things. But actually, can we just dialogue about it? Like, instead of
Yeah.
just saying no, like, and that's what happens a lot, right? It's like people don't really want to criticize, say, for example, the Democrats because I guess they're holding hope that somehow we'll be saved. But actually, if we voted for them, we should be critiquing them. We all have
Yes.
jobs. We all get an annual review. We all get, critiqued highly. And so
Yes.
that's what we have to be doing for everything right now. We have to question every single thing that's coming out of people's mouths. I get a lot of, one of the things that kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit annoying about social media is again, you get, somebody saying something, it's kind of sarcastic or it's a quip or, it's like a point people are making, but they're not furthering the conversation.
Yes.
Right? And so, that's what we have to do right now. We have to further the conversation. We have to expand the conversation. It's very limited right now what people are even talking about. I mean, why is nobody even calling for arrests yet? They may be talking about to Christy no one during the Senate hearing or the congressional hearing, like, why haven't you done any arrests? But who's actually saying arrest Jonathan Ross right now? It's us. It's nobody that's in office or on TV or in the media, so, that's finding people like you and other people again like us who are just trying to dialogue and expand
Yeah.
our minds and our
Yes.
conversation. That's what matters to me right now.
We're people. We're communicators. I always use the word mycelium, because anybody that understands how the network of roots works, there's your roots, and then there's this mycelium network where everybody shares nutrients under the dirt. I mean, that's us. But
That's
we
it.
aren't. But everything doesn't have to be physical. We're a different people. I was I was reading. I saw Dana Dubois, who I just absolutely adore Dana Dubois, but I saw her do a thing where she was visiting her father who's mentally declined. And he has a roommate who is also mentally declined. And the first thing that he could do was notice that she's a full figured woman and make comment about that. To which I said, we are our intellect and we are the beast. When we lose the intellect that drives our beast, we're just left to the beast, where all we think about is eating, sleeping, and mating. And what's left when you lose you? You know what I mean?
That's right.
Uh, and and we have instinct, but we're greater than instinct.
Yeah.
We're a part of this. And I'm working on a theory. You ever have something on the tip of your tongue and you just can't say it? I have this theory of things that I watch because I can't define it, but I cannot define that there is something going on, but I can see it. So, when going back to what I'm saying is our intellect is something that connects us, but it's separate from this physical stuff. I mean, there's so much things that we don't see because we don't need to physically see them. I almost feel like it wasn't until like colonialism started taking over the world that you had to have a literally defined word and not something that you could feel,
Great
acknowledge,
point.
and accept.
That's a great point because, the power, the patriarchy defines.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you think about pre-colonialism, societies operated differently. And of course, I think much more about the indigenous cultures that we could learn so much from, the different structures of society and the spiritual aspect of it, not religious, spiritual, the way
Yes.
that people are connected to each other, the way that people are connected to nature. And I really love your metaphor. Did you say mycelium? Is that the word?
Yes.
Mycelium, right? The roots, how we're connected, and how it's unspoken. And
Yes.
also, one of the things I talk a lot about in my therapy practice is that we are much beyond this physical body. Our
Yeah.
energy extends out very wide, and that's why
Yes.
sometimes you can be in the same room with a person, they're not saying anything, but of course, you can feel their energy. We
Yes.
share energy. We share all kinds of connections that are unspoken. And this
Yes.
brain is powerful. And it's not just the language of it, it is the senses. It is, again, the intuition, the seen and unspoken parts of who we are that have through colonialism have been suppressed because they're powerful and they're unexplained and they threaten the power.
I guess because we're starting to go in this direction, colonialism and all, I've been working on a theory moving back through history. I blame the Etruscans. The Etruscans were the people that the Romans were so sick of being downtrodden and ruled that they broke away. And that's how the Romans became the Romans because their culture was so evil and corrupt. So the Romans broke off. And then that's how the Roman Empire came about. And then, of course, because they wanted people for people and, power is corrupting, the Romans became the Romans. And so the Etruscans are actually in the Vatican. They never lost the Roman. The Etruscans took over the Greeks. They moved into the Vatican because the Pope carries the same title as Caesar. And the robes that the Pope wears, all the decorations in the Vatican, are that of the Etruscans. Like if you dig up the Etruscan artifacts, they look like that belong in the Vatican. So really, it didn't go anywhere. There's actually a culture source that came across, Europe and stuff like that. And
Wow. Well, it's too bad the Catholic Church squandered all that
yes,
to
but
become very harmful in terms of hoarding of wealth, hoarding of information, and of course, the way that they have oppressed entire societies and the globe.
yeah,
However, understanding again the sort of the roots of things and why they could maybe take why they may have wanted to take again power that was unspoken, unknown, and define it to their advantage makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I mean, all that. But you think about that, where we were talking about that unconnected energy that actually drives people. And then they want to take that tangible physical word like we're doing now in America. They want to take that physical, tangible word and hold it like an icon, whereas you and I are speaking more along the dialogue of spiritualism. You
Yes,
think about, when they took the African slaves, the people from Africa who were enslaved, and they tried to teach them faith. They took out all the parts about slavery. But when the reason that there's a difference between Southern Baptist culture and like, I grew up around here, Roman Catholic and stuff like that. It was
I grew
very
up
quiet.
Catholic as well.
Oh, sure. Very quiet, very, very until you got to stand up and shake everybody's hand. That was
Right.
about it. Um,
Right.
but the whole thing was African culture is what's going on in the South. So you have these very white people who decry this as being their heritage culture and stuff like that. But it was actually African culture and their spirituality that decorates and adorns that which they consider Southern, you know, faith.
What a great perspective to have. Nick, I want to say hi to a few more people who may have joined, if you don't mind, for 1 minute.
Yeah, please.
Hello, Elizabeth Cruz, Lucy, Son of G, great to see you. I love your participation. Bob, Bud Jones, Bob Patterson is asking, what's the difference between a creepy street scouting predator looking for children to kidnap and a billionaire child rape playboy? Epstein
Hmm.
Island. Oh, I like your joke. Let's see who else. Let's see. Da, 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 da. I'm just seeing who else is here. Oh, I got a lot of comments here. Hi, Jazz Garcia. They commented on KRS. Great tune. I listen to it often.
Old school.
Let's see who else. I love your comments, you guys. Hi, Lloyd. Great to see you. Stefan, you always come through and I love it. The Glassy View is here. Mega Dude, Heidi, Margaret Williams. Hey, Larry. Great to see you. Charlie A. Loved all your participation as always. Joe, Karen. Oh, Cunt Punk. I love your name. Francis and Emily Scram. Robert Fever. They're commenting a lot on what you're talking about, Nick G. This conversation has been amazing.
Cool.
Lana
Really cool.
Montalban, great to see you guys. Chris Resists. Hi there, MS. Oh, I love you too. Thank you so much. Bill. You guys, thank you so much. Nick G, it's getting to the end of our discussion time, but let us keep this going and do it again soon.
Yeah, I'm in.
You know?
like I say, I work weekends. It's night weekends, and Tuesday's usually a throwaway day while I'm trying to, recuperate. But Wednesdays, Thursday, Fridays, I'm chilling.
Great, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I normally do work, but we could do something in the evening.
Oh, yeah,
Are you around
absolutely.
in the evening? Like, today I'm off, but, I could always do something in the evening, which is also a great time to kinda get a crowd and see some different people.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's very important to me to maintain this connection, Nick G. We gotta stay connected.
I
Right?
think it's a
This
big
is
deal.
the
Yeah,
only way that all of us will survive
yeah,
authoritarianism. I really wanna tell the audience, like, we're not living in a democracy right now, you guys. We have to reclaim it, but what we have to do is survive authoritarianism, and the only way we can do it is through this kind of dialogue. We can't just listen to pundits. We can't just read on social media or listen even just to news. We have to be in this dialogue, and
yeah,
so I think, what Nick G and I are doing today is just what I'm into, and I wanna keep it up.
yeah. I'm definitely in. Stay in contact with me when you got free time. I'll let you know when I got free time, and this is
Yes, and
great.
also in the morning, potentially, you were up really early yesterday morning doing it, but, always
Yeah,
reach out to me. I can always pretty much, you too, you're a great conversationalist. Like, we can just
hey,
come on and we can just boom, go. No
yeah.
preparation needed.
Yeah, well, hey, like I says, time isn't real. So we have already had our relationship of conversations, and right now we're just picking up in that point.
I love it so much, and I thank you so much. I really love the conversation we had, and I love hearing something different, Again, the things that you talked about are not things I normally talk about with anybody. So
Right.
this is what we gotta keep doing.
Yeah, yeah. I really had fun. I appreciate you inviting me, Michelle. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'm sending love through time and space.
Awesome. That's great.
Alright. Be well.
Thank you.
Mwah. Bye, everybody. See you soon.